21. He was assaulted. Alzif Loda, the vice commander of the Third Night Order, was about to begin his usual desk work when he tilted his head at a strange feeling. It feels like there are fewer documents than usual. Alzif's job was to support the commander, Aresh. But Aresh Indrak, perhaps because of his rare genius, didn't bother with trivial matters. When that happened, the Third Order's clerical work stalled, and Alzif was the one who mainly took it on. And yet, Alzif had never minded that role. Partly because Aresh was his cousin, but also because Aresh's outstanding talent had been so overwhelming since childhood that Alzif had never even felt competitive with him. More than that, by handling all those miscellaneous duties himself, Alzif could make the atmosphere of the Third Order can't function without Alzif spread everywhere. Aresh had the talent for sword and magic, but in practice, Alzif was the one who kept the Third Order running. Being told that, Alzif was satisfied with his place. And yet, Aresh, you were here, what's that? When he looked up at the presence entering, the familiar black-haired, black-clad, beautiful commander was stepping into the room, holding documents Alzif recognized. Yeah, the draft plan for the next expedition itinerary was out, so I summarized it. What? At his commander's casual tone, Alzif couldn't even pretend to stay composed. His shock showed plainly on his face. Aresh, unconcerned, sat at the desk and picked up the next document. Aresh working on his own initiative. If Aresh started doing his work properly too, he'd become flawless. And then what would be the point of me? Alzif panicked, but the next words out of Aresh's mouth abruptly derailed his thoughts. Alazif, what do you think is the reason someone says younger people are outside their romantic range? Huh? What did he just say? This genius mage and swordsman of noble birth, tall, cool, and devastatingly handsome. The man who monopolized the attention of high society women. What was he saying? Why you mean about romantic preferences? Silence was confirmation. A love talk. Right now, Aresh was asking him for romantic advice? That younger cousin who always looked like his emotions were frozen, whose range of expression was paper thin. The cousin 6 years younger who had never once cared about women's affection. Was he telling him he'd found an older person he liked? Alzif wanted to leap up and scream, but if he ruined Aresh's mood, he wouldn't hear the rest. Because this perfect cousin was, apparently, not being reciprocated by his older crush. Alzif wanted to know everything, and Aresh was relying on him to talk about it. There was no way he would waste this chance. Alzif reset himself, cleared his throat once, and in as neutral a tone as possible. No, in a tone that radiated the calm confidence of an older love master. He spoke. Ahem. Well, if there's too much of an age gap, sometimes your values don't align. That could be one factor. He framed it as general advice, trying to keep Aresh talking. Values. Aresh nodded with a serious face, and Alzif fought down both the emotion of having Aresh actually accept his words for once and the explosive realization that his cousin had fallen for someone significantly older. Oh my god, seriously? Who is the older person Aresh fell for? I want to know. Maybe that's why he started working seriously too. Then they must be palace staff. Palace staff, older, connected to Aresh. Who? I want to go find them right now. Saikaira. A calm, middle-aged man with rose-brown hair and a blue mantle approached from the front. Saikaira stopped and bowed. Ideally, in front of the chancellor, he might have had to kneel, but Saikaira, a modern Japanese man, could only manage courtesy at this level on instinct. The chancellor, Camel, didn't seem to mind. He casually raised one hand and stopped beside him. I was planning to summon you soon anyway, so this is perfect. Since being interrupted at work was irritating, that was good news for Saikaira. It meant there was business to discuss, so he lifted his head. What is it? The Saintess's education has entered its final stage, so we're planning an inspection visit to the demonic forest soon. Finally, it had already been nearly 3 months since Saikaira and the others had been abducted to this world. He'd thought they could have gone for an inspection much earlier if guards were attached. Well, the Second Order and the First Prince are against it, so it may take a little longer. Shirai, the Saintess's purification power can be used now, correct? Yes, that's what I've heard. As he calculated in his head the total costs from the forest's miasma damage over these 3 months, and the budget spent on the Saintess, Saikaira swallowed a sigh. We've been requesting urgency as well, so I'm counting on you too, Saikaira. So, Estimate the miasma damage and expedition costs and submit the paperwork. Saikaira understood and nodded. Either way, the faster purification happened, the less time and money would be wasted. If persuasion by numbers could work, it would at least have some effect on the second order. He pushed the memory of the knight who'd harassed him in the cafeteria off to the corner of his mind. Then, until next time. Yes. Excuse me. They parted in the corridor, and Saikaira began assembling his schedule mentally, thinking through all the work on his plate. Expedition materials, there should be older versions. And if I take that and that home and prioritize them, I can finish by tomorrow evening. That was why he didn't notice. The eyes watching him. The shadow waiting in an infrequently used corridor. The first thing he felt was a massive impact that hit his whole body. Then his mouth was covered and his body, already thrown, was dragged further. What is this? His mouth sealed with something like cloth, he was hauled into a dark room like a storage shed. Lying face down, he felt a heavy weight pressed down onto his back. He flew pretty easily. Compared to the Saintess, an otherworlder with no power really is this weak. And he had the nerve to act so high and mighty. With a head he couldn't properly lift, Saikaira forced his gaze upward and saw two men looking down at him. Men he recognized. They were from the Third Order, the ones who had repeatedly come to complain about expenses. And there had been 3 voices, meaning the weight on his back wasn't an object, it was a person. And that voice was familiar too. You scum who lusts after the Saintess, don't think you can fool us with some flimsy excuse. Right, the young knight from the Second Order who had harassed him in the cafeteria. So his denial hadn't reached him at all. In other words, the Saintess-worshipping man and the 2 who resented Saikaira over expenses had teamed up. Saikaira grasped the situation immediately. He understood it, but this was still another world where his common sense didn't apply. And in this world, Saikaira was even more fragile than usual. Irrational violence, something he'd never had any connection to, came crashing down on him. After parting with Saikaira, Camel Kalvada remembered the materials he had forgotten to hand over and turned back. Saikaira worked well even when left alone, but when given information and documents, his results exceeded expectations. He was so capable that Camel had even considered pulling him into his own faction. But it seemed Saikaira's strength was numbers, where his ability truly shone. And because he wasn't aligned with any faction, he was valuable. Camel even considered granting him independent authority. Having served in the palace for a long time, and confident enough in his own abilities, Camel took an efficient shortcut through a lightly trafficked corridor. There, he noticed a storage door slightly ajar. Thinking someone had forgotten to close it, he approached without much thought. It wasn't until he put his hand on the door to close it that he heard a groan from inside. Saikaira? Inside the wide-open storage room lay Saikaira, his body covered in wounds, groaning, the very man Camel had just spoken with moments before. He was not sexually assaulted.